Right. So welcome back, and I'm so glad that you guys all stayed. And I wanted to introduce myself because there's a lot of people out there that are going, who is this woman? You were probably wondering that a little while ago too. My name is Mary Davis, and I work with the Charles A. Dana Center. I am in Crowley ISD as a facilitator in my role as a hub facilitator, but I also do a lot of the math stuff in the hub, so you'll probably see me quite a bit as we go through this. With me today is Sharon Oldham, and those of you in Richardson may know Sharon. She's going to be helping me present a little bit today. So thank you for coming, and we're going to begin a semester-long study together of the 5 practices. And we mentioned that it would probably be a good idea if you had this book with you. If you don't today, it's not a problem. But you were sent both of these books not too long ago, and you might have wondered, well, why'd they send them to us? Now you'll know, and we'll get working through those. So you're more than welcome to have them out. I will tell you pages when I get to them throughout. All right. All right. So here we go. Maybe. There we go.
I'm not sure I understand.
That was Siri telling you that. All right. So this is our network aim and our network goal. But I want to look a little closer at the network aim, because there's this part that we say every time we look at it, but we haven't really talked about it in great depth. And that is the fact that we say that we want to get our kiddos academically and behaviorally on track to graduate high school, ready for college and career success, college and or career. And that can include military as well. We want to get these kids ready because, I mean, I don't think there's anybody that you could look at right now and say, I don't want this kid to graduate. All right. You want to get them ready for real life after they leave your classroom. So then the question is then, what does it mean? If you know, we talked about this, it's on track to graduate, sure, but what does that mean? I want you to think for just a minute, and then we're going to use the chat box. So if you haven't pulled up your chat box, pull up your chat box and type in there, what kind of skills do you think the kids need to have as they leave the classroom for either college or a career? Go ahead and type those into the chat box. Time management, yeah, I still don't have that one, Allison, thank you. Financial literacy, critical thinking. How to relate to others, yes. Critical thinking, lots of that. Thinking period, good. All right. So you guys can continue to put those in there. I want to show you what CNBC, I always have to look at the letters so I don't tell you the wrong source. But here's what CNBC said, because I really want to make this connection between, between what we're talking about with discourse and what we're talking about in this work that we're doing together. Because I heard a lot in the classroom or in the discussions that we were having earlier about the math and getting the kids to work and so forth, which are all very, very important things. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, when they get out in the real world, if they're a doctor or if they're a lawyer, they're going to have specific skills. But these skills are those soft skills, what you guys are talking about in here, those social emotional skills. You're right, Val, so important. So if you look at this list, you hit a lot of them, but I've underlined a few words along the way because adapting, okay, we want kids to have a growth mindset. They believe that they can adapt. They're creative. They develop new ideas and new answers to existing problems. There's your problem solving. I like that. They have to have focus, okay? And that's a difficult one, but they do have to have focus. so that they can make those decisions. Improving on an existing idea, speaking, listening, observing, ding, 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 there we go, discourse. Storytelling. They have to be able to share what they're working on, get that narrative out there. Cultural awareness. That's a big piece of the work that we do. Critical thinking, leadership, and emotional, like you were talking about, emotional intelligence. These are the things that major colleges and major employers got together and were the top 10 things. And so many of them have their basis in discourse, speaking, observing, narrating, interacting, coming up with new ideas, creativity, adapting, all these things. So what we're working on today, although it may sound like it, yeah, sure, we can use it in math class, but it's really something that these kiddos are going to use in math, in English, in social studies, in life. So it becomes a very, very important part of the work that we're doing. Really quickly, and I'm going to have you hold me to these. The session objectives. We are going to operationalize equity through the 5 discourse practices. We already talked a little bit about that idea of equity on the last page. Understand the focus of the shared learning. We're going to be together and there's going to be more PD throughout this entire semester that will get us through the entire book. We want to really consider the teaching practices from principles to action and how they link to discourse, because we looked at principles to actions. Now, some of you guys up to 3 years now, we've had that blue book in our hand. And that book directly leads into what we're going to be doing in the new one. And then clarify the structure of the professional learnings going forward from here. Remember this? Some of you guys are looking at it going, oh, the driver diagram again. Yes, but this time we want to look at it with a different viewpoint, okay? So instead of focusing in on one driver and what we're going to be changing, as we talk about discourse today, I want you to keep this driver in the back of your head, all right? And we're going to revisit it when we come to the end of our discussion, and we're going to talk about where we see discourse within this driver diagram. Now, obviously, there's one that specifically says, facilitate meaningful discourse. Yes, obviously that one we got taken care of. But I want you to keep your mind open and listen for things so that you can see where it fits into those other drivers as well. We're not going to have norms in here today. Usually we have a list of norms, but there's 3 things that I would like you to embrace as we get started today. 1, come as you are, all right? Some of you, when you come to our meetings, I know are like, oh my God, there's so many teachers and there's so many people from so many other districts, and I just don't want to open my mouth because, you know, I hear it a lot. But the fact is that every single person sitting here has something to offer, and I want you to offer it. So if you feel like you have a question, please ask that question. And if you don't want to ask it out loud, Sharon's going to be monitoring the chat box as well. So ask it in the chat box, not a problem. If you have thoughts to share, if I'm sitting here talking about something and you're like, oh man, that links to something that I just did in my classroom, let me know. You know, if you have something to share, we want you to share it. We're all at different places right now, and that's okay. There is not a wrong place to be. So we invite you to come as you are to the learning. But we have to remember that the learning today is iterative. And what I mean by that is, just like in our PDSA cycles, you have to realize that you might catch on to a little today. You might grab a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Like earlier today, I heard one of you guys shared that you like that idea of the anchor charts online. Great, you grabbed a little bit. Try it out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, how can you change it? So it's really doing that PDSA as we're learning through these professional developments together. So remember that it's iterative as we go through this. You're not gonna gain all the information in one quick sit down. And then finally, the third one, which is very difficult for me, as anybody that knows me knows this, but we need to embrace the pause. As teachers, we understand wait time. But when I talk about embracing the pause, it's even a step further, okay? We need to give ourselves time to reflect. So as we present something today, really take some time to think about it. Let it sink in. If a question is asked and you need a little more time to let it sink in, you know, let me know. Because that pause, that is what makes it go from that presentation to that deep thoughtfulness that you'll be able to then share in the classroom. So let's go ahead and get busy. Sharon.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find my cursor. Hello, everybody. I'm Sharon Oldham, in case you don't know me. Thank you, Mary, for introducing everybody or getting everything started. So I would like for you guys to contemplate, embrace the pause for a minute, contemplate your answer to this question. So what in the world is productive discourse? What is it in your head? So we're going to use the chat again. And if you'll open that up and just give me a couple of words about what you think productive discourse is, and I'll wait for you. Sharing opposing ideas. Okay, that's awesome, you guys. So we're going to also give you a couple of ideas of what productive discourse is. Mary, if you'll advance us forward. You've said communicating in the chat. You've said speaking. You've also said writing. I saw that in there. Collaborating, listening to one another, illustrating, and modeling. And those two things right there, you guys, I don't know if you have heard a variety of definitions for those two words. Illustrating is exactly like illustration in an art class where you get some kind of visual. That could be in math, a graph. That can be a demonstration of some sort, like a video where you're illustrating something. It can be a picture. It can be a chart. Modeling, it sometimes has a variety of definitions, but modeling in our minds is modeling your thinking, where the teacher stands up and actually voices the thinking processes that they went through to solve the problem, not necessarily doing an example. Now, sometimes we use that word interchangeably in our profession. We say the word model when we are like giving an example, but in our situation, modeling is where you are actually revealing or showing your thinking. And I think you guys even put that in the list over here. Think aloud, it just now went in into the chat. And then on the bottom, it says being metacognitive, thinking about your own thinking, which, man, if we can get kids in the classroom as they're having conversations in their groups or with each other in pairs or with you, to get them to be metacognitive about their own thinking, I would be doing the happy dance every single day if I could get kids to do that. So if you'll go to the next one, Mary, all of this is so that we can find out what kids are thinking. Making their thinking visible is the bottom line for discourse in the classroom. If we can get them talking and talking about all these things that are in the orange bubbles and get them talking in the manner that you guys have listed in the chat, then we are going to have a better idea of what kids are thinking, and that's going to inform us for our instruction and make us all do better in the classroom, especially if we can get them to understand concepts because of that. So on the next slide is a definition, an official definition from NCTM. So to get started, I would like for one person, somebody, I don't care who, volunteer, just unmute yourself and read the entire definition from NCTM, if you don't mind.
Discourse is the mathematical communication that occurs in a classroom. Effective discourse happens when students articulate their own ideas and seriously consider their peers' mathematical perspectives as a way to construct their own mathematical understandings.
Outstanding. Thank you. Okay, you guys, there's a lot in that definition, and there's a lot of things that sound absolutely wonderful if we can get kids to do in the classroom. I would like for someone else to begin and read the exact same thing, but I want you to begin where it says effective discourse, where the orange words are. Somebody please read from there down one more time, and you guys really pay attention to what they're saying in this definition. Someone new.
Effective discourse happens when students articulate their own ideas and seriously consider their peers' perspectives as a way to construct their own mathematical understandings.
Outstanding. Thanks, you guys. Thank you so much. So there's a lot there. If we can get kids to articulate their own ideas and seriously consider their peers' ideas and perspectives, then that's going to help them with their own, the math concept in their own brain. And that would be magical if we can get kids to do that in the classroom. So, Mary, if you'll go to the next one. So why do we want to do that? Well, I think it's kind of obvious, but these three things are the three big reasons why we want kids to talk in class and to get to that level of the definition from NCTM. We want to deepen their understanding, of course. We want to encourage kids to build on and construct new ideas. And we also, thank goodness for us as teachers, we want to see their thinking. We want to hear their thinking. So making student thinking visible these are the three big things that we hope to accomplish with student discourse in the math classroom. So you've all had kids, and you've all had kids talk in class. You've put kids into groups before. Sometimes that has been absolutely delightful, and you get a lot done, your kids get a lot out of it, they walk out with a pretty good understanding of what you had intended to teach, and then other times it is not a happy day, and you either have the kids take over on accident, or you end up doing a tell, and it's not the kind of productive class discussion that you had planned for. So I want you to think about that for a second. What is the difference in those 2 days, in those two class periods? Think about one that went well. Think about one where you know it was not so good. And think in your head, okay, what was the difference in those two? How are they different? What was going on that was different? Maybe what did I do that was different? What we're gonna do here in just a few minutes is we're gonna break out into breakout rooms. And Mary has got you all set up, and she's going to move you here in just a few minutes. We would like for you to go into that room. You're only going to have like about 5 minutes. Once you get in there, have a conversation about these things. Have a conversation about one that went well, one that went bad, or really have a conversation about the question. What was the difference between those two classes? When you come back, Mary will probably ask somebody to share. And we would like to hear what your discussion is about. So Mary, are we ready to move? Okay.
I stated in the chat box that hopefully you picked somebody to share out. So if somebody would like to share out, maybe what was some of the differences? What did you notice? Why do they share sometimes and they don't share other times?
Mary, this is Devin from Duncanville.
Hey, Devin.
Hey, I'll go ahead and share some of what we had on kind of why they do and don't, I guess, respond the way they want to. We did realize that it was real easy to know and be reflective whenever they didn't. And it was real easy to say, it's time for me to go back to the drawing board. It was a little tougher from some of the people that were in our group to actually pinpoint what it was, but the juices were at least flowing to try and figure out what those were. One of our group members, CJ, was talking about trying to provide some sort of support, such as sentence stems and things like that, to give them a good start as they're going. And another is to give them some private think time and to write things down, say on a sticky note. And then as they're having their discussion, if they can't think of anything to say, just read your sticky note and move on from there.
I like that. And that may, what you guys came in on, and right before you guys broke out, Sheila had asked in the chat box about virtual versus in person. And maybe that sticky note idea might work for that virtual. You know, have them have that think time and stick, you know, have a sticky note or use a Jamboard sticky note or whatever, and then they have something to share. I like that. Another group, something that you guys talked about while you were away. One more group, please.
Mary, I'll speak.
All right.
What I found in our group is, I mean, it always goes well when we're interacting with the kids and the kids are talking and responding to us. But what I did note is that whenever you have not a great mix of kids, by that I mean, if you have a group of outgoing kids versus a group of introverted kids, if you're my pre-AP kids, 9 times out of 10 are always arguing, extroverted, going back and forth with one another. But my regular kids, the kids who are not confident in math, they're going to sit there and look at you. And if it's all of them are that way and they all don't think they're pretty good at math, it's a struggle. You need a good balance of possibly, and I like the sticky note idea, but being able to hear their voices, being able to pull somebody up who might be contagious to pull another person. But if you have that whole class of introverted kids, it's going to be a long 35, 45 minutes, without a doubt.
I agree. Thank you very much for sharing, Orlando. You guys, and I'm sure that there were more, so if there's things that are pressing on your mind that you're like, oh, they really should have heard this, please put them into the chat. We'd love to have added to the chat. Oh, look, Kawana was already typing as I did this. So I like that. Kawana, you went to your kids. That's a huge, I'm going way off script here and I'm gonna kill myself when I don't end up at the 45 minutes. But when you wanna get the kids to talk, who's the ones that are gonna figure out why they're not talking? It's the kids. I like that. So yeah, that might be a really neat thing to do to bolster that too, to find out why they aren't. You know, we're making some assumptions, but maybe there's something else. I like that. Thank you. All right. So you guys brought up a lot of these already about some of the pitfalls. I was taking notes. Sometimes it's a fear of failure. Sometimes it's, you know, the idea that the kids are just going to go off talking about who knows what. Sometimes it's the classroom environment, whether it's virtual, in person, or that mix. The confidence level of the kids, I think I said that I wrote down types of kids, and that's terrible that I wrote that down. But the different ways that they can share, if they feel confident sharing, or if they feel a little bit, they aren't as open as the other kids. So these pitfalls are things that happen in everybody's class. And I see that the chat box is coming up more too. So I'm really excited about that. So the idea that we're all having these issues is why we've decided to spend an entire semester working through the 5 practices. Because in this book, it helps you figure out how you can get the control over the discussions. Some of the ideas that you guys have had, the think, pair, share, the Post-it notes, those are great ways to get the students to have something to share when it's their time to share. But sometimes we need to get control over the discussions. Like, for example, what I'm pointing over here because you guys are over here on my screen. Sometimes it's, you know, I just like I did for you guys right now, it's like someone share and then you sit there. It's like, is anybody gonna share? No. Other times you ask a question and literally everybody wants to share. So you need to get that control over the discussion so that that you're just not tap dancing through it. You know what I'm saying? You mentioned this about the confidence in the mathematics. So students' responses advance the mathematical understanding of everyone in the classroom. Everyone. So, and sometimes even ourselves when they come up with a different answer, right? So we need to realize that the ways that we get the students to share their math is how we're pushing that, that mathematical understanding along. This book helps with that. We're going to make sense of student strategies, okay? And that means that there has to be more than one strategy that we allow. And for some math teachers, I get it. I get it. You're like, I want it one way. And if they can get it that one way, you know, I'm doing the butterfly method and they're going to solve it using that period. I'm not having any other methods. Well, sometimes kids don't see it that way. We need to understand their strategies and how they're approaching it and help them through it and how it's connected. And then finally, I just said the word, but connected. We need to make sure that we're connecting those strategies and making connections. And finally, that bottom piece is not from the book. The blue piece at the bottom of this is from our equity initiative, because we want to elevate the data and the practical and balancing measures that promote reflection and growth. So when we're looking for all students to make these moves, it's actually hitting on that equity piece as well. So I wanted to pull that out of our equity document to make sure we understand that using these practices can help get every student in the class involved. So the 5 practices are, and if you want to, if you have your book out, starting on page 9, there's a brief paragraph for each one of these. This is that's why there's a little light bulb in the bottom corner, because this is really the crux of what we're talking about today. Today is only an introduction. I'll explain how we're going to talk about the 5 different practices as we go through the semester. But the 5 practices start with anticipating. Folks, if you don't do the math before your students do the math, then it's really difficult to plan a mathematical discussion, okay, or discourse. If you don't do the math before they do the math, you don't know where they're going to fall into a problem. You don't know where there's going to be 12 different ways to solve a problem and you only know one. It's happened. I've been there. All right. Monitoring is getting more difficult these days, because even if you're in the classroom, you cannot walk over to them, lean over and breathe on them anymore. So monitoring is a key piece that we have to keep in our minds, even though it's becoming more difficult. And there are some tools that you can use. Some of you are aware of some of the online tools that you can use in order to monitor their work without breathing right down their necks. Then you have to select the work. You need to be able to pick the work you want to share. I did an absolutely terrible job earlier of modeling the 5 practices, but obviously I didn't know what each group talked about when you were away. If you're going to have a deep discussion, it can't be who wants to share, because I may not know exactly what they're going to share, and it may be right, it may be wrong, it may be the quickest way, it may be the slowest way. And as a teacher, I need to be the one. It's kind of like I was in band. I was a band geek, okay, bass clarinet here. But anyway, it's like the conductor. As a math teacher, you are the conductor of what's going on in the classroom. And so you need to be able to select what parts you want going at the same time and then sequence them into music that makes sense, or into, in this case, mathematics that makes sense. And then finally, you need to do that connecting so that Jared understands what Abby understands, what Devin understands, what Sharon, and all the different responses and strategies. So this is like the most fun we're going to have together. I know you guys are sitting there thinking, really, Mary? But yes, This book is all about the background information in the 5 practices. This book actually has video links in it. It has activities in it. And so we're going to be doing a lot of that together too. And I'll explain more about that in just a little while. All right. So I'm going to let you go back to your breakout rooms again. But this time when we're in the breakout rooms, you're going to have a Padlet to work on. And I want to share, new share. So you're going to go in and you're going to get into this Padlet. There's only one Padlet. It's not per group or anything. One Padlet. And you'll notice that the Padlet is the same as the primary drivers down that first row. So teacher and PLC, instructional planning, student experience and engagement, teacher and student mindset, and resource allocation and policy foundations. So what I would like you to do is to pick someone that just loves to write in Padlet, and you'll click on this, just one person, all right, can write in here and talk about what they see discourse, discussions, talking in the math classroom, how that has to do with each one of the drivers, so that we see no matter where we are in the driver diagram, what we're talking about today really, really matters, okay? What question have I put into your head right now? Anything you need to ask me? Remember, only one person writes down what's going on in your group. All right? All right. We will see you back here in a few minutes. Here we go. Can you see my PowerPoint now? I don't know. It looks different, but I think it's still there. Okay. So, so what I saw when I looked across the Padlet, and I was really excited to see that, is that you saw discourse in all 4 of the areas, including resource allocation. That was the one that I thought, I wonder if you guys will see that idea of discourse in there. And there was a lot of that talking about beg, borrowing, or stealing. I like that. But we also have to want the kids to come to school, then we have to make it engagement. So I love the fact that you guys talk so much about anticipating in that PLC time and student interactions and the engagement. This is why we're working on this. This is why we're doing this. It hits every part of the driver. It also hit, remember when we started today, when we started talking about what they need for college or career success, it hit those too. So I'm really excited about that. I think the other group is the other group coming back in, Kate? Like the principals and stuff?
No, Mary, they're going to stay in their own room. So we're going to close out in this room and they're going to close out in that room.
Perfect. All right. So I just want you, I'm going to have you do this on your own. We did have a Padlet for you to do, but time-wise, I just want you to embrace the pause, okay? As we talked about earlier. What is the most challenging aspect of what you heard today? What is it? Okay. I'll give you just a minute to think about that because that's very personal. What is the most challenging aspect as you consider using discourse? And then the second one is not as personal. It's something that I need from you. And that is, I want to get some information from you because these are your professional development that we set up. And I want to have your voice heard as well. So it's really important that I know what you would like to see in future sessions. So I can't promise, you know, if you say, oh, I'd like you to send me $100 before each session, not happening. But what would you like to see in these little chunks of learning? What can I do for you, basically, is what I'm saying. What can I do for you? Willingness of students to participate, really focusing in on getting those kids to participate. I like that, Sheila. Being intentional, keeping this as a focus. Yes, all 5, and we're going to talk about the days that you can start seeing it. All 5 are focused on one book. Well, 2 books actually, because there's the follow-up. Okay, so you're right, Jared. This year is different than any other year. So we need to approach the learning in kind of 2 ways. One, if it was regular, because you do need to get ready for that. Eventually it's going to happen. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, injection in arm. But the question is, when is that going to happen? And until then, how are we going to get that? Okay. Being intentional with all 5, I like that. And we're going to do, if I miss something in here, PLCs, folks, if you're looking for something to do in a PLC, once I've introduced a topic, like right now, the introduction, there's actually a whole section on the introduction in here that has links and you can listen to people talking about it and stuff. So you can go beyond what I talk about, but we will go through all 5, I promise. Zoom video examples. Oh yes, we're going to be looking at some classrooms, most definitely. All right. So you guys are on the same page as I am. That's great. And I will keep these. That's why I wanted to put them in chat since we weren't going to get them on a Jamboard. I wanted to make sure I had them. So here's the calendar. This one says setting goals and selecting tasks. And you might go, hey, it's January and we did not talk about that yet. This was just an overview. That's because the 3rd Thursday of every month is when these are going to be released. So January is not released yet. What we just went through was not January session. All right. January session will be released next Thursday. All right. And then the 3rd Thursday of every month. So January, February. Okay. So you'll always know when it's coming up. We'll always have, I plan on doing it a week before, and I'm so sorry this time it did not get done because we were planning this. But for February through May, I promise you that at least a week before, we will put essential questions on the site first so that you get an idea of what the learning is going to be about. And then we are going to keep my talking to 30 minutes or less. That's not to say that I might not ask you to watch a video or to read something in the book between them. I mean, you have a whole month. It's not like I'm asking you to do it overnight. So I promise to keep them short, but there may be some learning to do in between the sessions, but I promise to keep it as short as possible. But I wanted to make sure that we get to those videos and you get the chance to see things in real life and what it looks like. All right. It can be asynchronous, okay? If you are at a school and they never mention this and you're like, I really like that and I want to do it, you can do it on your own. It will be set up that way. However, if you want to set aside a PLC once a month to do it together, it'll work in that as well. So it's totally up to your school on how you want to use it. That's why we kept it to 30 minutes or less. Okay? Questions on that? What questions have I put in your head? All right. Then